This week is a reminder that the stuff we treat like glue is now a primary failure domain. CI trigger roles, Cert renewals, Helm charts, automation tools. One tiny assumption goes sideways, and suddenly you're dealing with a supply chain risk, a global build break, or an RCE in the thing that holds all your credentials. Hey, I'm Brian. I work in DevOps and SRE, and I run Teller's Tech. This is Ship It Weekly, where I filter the noise and pull out what actually matters when you're the one running infrastructure and owning reliability. If something's hype, I'll call it hype. If it changes how you operate, we'll talk about it. Quick bit of housekeeping, the show notes and links are on shipitweekly.fm. If the show's been useful, follow it wherever you listen. Also, a rating helps way more than it should. 4 main stories for today. First, CodeBreach, a CI trigger and filtering issue in a small set of AWS managed repos that's a perfect reminder that CI glue is part of your security boundary now. Second, the Bazel TLS Cert Expiry incident, the kind of failure that is boring, binary, and absolutely capable of blocking your entire engineering org. Third, Helm chart reliability. Prequel reviewed over 100 popular charts, and the results are basically a postmortem template for why it installed fine is not a reliability guarantee. Fourth, n8n, 2 new high-severity flaws disclosed by JFrog that can lead to code execution. We're going to treat this one like a mini-story because workflow automation tools are basically a control plane holding your secrets. Then, a quick lightning round with a few operator-friendly tools and takeaways. And a human closer tying the theme together. Alright, let's get into it. So, CodeBreach. AWS published a security bulletin describing a misconfiguration involving unanchored account_ID webhook filters for CodeBuild used by a small set of AWS-managed open-source repos. AWS says they mitigated it quickly, rotated credentials, reviewed logs, and added additional mitigations and protections around build processes with credentials in memory. Wiz's research frames the risk clearly. If you can trigger a privileged build in a repo that's part of a supply chain, you potentially get access to tokens and credentials that can be used to push changes or create malicious artifacts. That's why it's not just CI, it becomes supply chain. Now, the operator lesson is not CodeBuild is bad. The operator lesson is stop treating pipeline trigger logic like it's harmless. If an untrusted event can cause a trusted pipeline to run, you do not have CI. You have an execution environment exposed to the internet. And almost every org drifts towards this risk without meaning to. Here's the drift pattern. You start with PR checks, lint, test, build, great. Then someone adds integration tests. And those tests need credentials to hit an environment, or to pull from a private registry, or to call a third-party API. Then, someone adds preview deployments. Those need cloud creds, or at least some deploy token. Then someone adds artifact publishing because it's easier if the PR build produces the image. Now your PR pipeline can build and push images. Then someone uses those images in staging. And now your PR pipeline is part of your release path. And at that point, you've accidentally created a supply chain path where a PR can influence something that runs in your environment. This is why the most dangerous sentence in CI is, it only runs in CI. Because CI is usually the thing that holds credentials that can touch everything else. So the practical question to ask is simple. Can untrusted events cause trusted actions? Can a forked PR run a job that has secrets available? Can a PR comment trigger a workflow that can deploy? Can a PR workflow push artifacts that are later deployed? Can a PR workflow assume cloud roles? If the answer is yes, or even I'm not sure, you've got a boundary problem. Now, I want to give you a do this Monday playbook that doesn't require a big platform rewrite. Step 1. Label pipelines mentally as untrusted and trusted. Untrusted pipelines is PRs and forks. No secrets, no publish, no deploy. It answers, does it compile, do tests pass. Trusted pipelines run on merges to main, tags, or explicit manual approvals. That's the one allowed to publish and deploy. Step 2. Pick one repo, your most sensitive one, and map the event chain in plain English. What events trigger workflows? Which workflows can access secrets? Which workflows can write artifacts? Which workflows can deploy or change infra? Step 3. Check for the classic footguns. Are secrets injected into your PR workflows at all? Are you using conditions like actor checks or branch checks as auth? Are you relying on the code won't print secrets as a control? Do you allow PR builds from forks to run with privileged tokens? If you find these, the fix is not perfect security. The fix is strong separation. PR builds can still run. Just keep them in the untrusted sandbox. If you need integration tests, run them in a separate environment with a separate low privilege credential set. If you need to build images, build them, but don't push them to a production registry, or push to an isolated registry that cannot be used for deploy. If you need a preview environment, require approval before anything privileged runs. And the last point, even if you fix the triggers, scope matters. Least privilege for CI tokens is not optional. Your pipeline credentials should not be able to do everything. That's story 1. Story 2 is Bazel. On December 26, 2025, the TLS certificates for many star.bazel.build domains expired, and it caused widespread build breakage. The Bazel team's postmortem says the outage lasted around 13 hours before it was resolved. This is one of those incidents that's both boring and terrifying. Boring because it's just a cert. Terrifying because cert failures are a binary cliff. Everything works, then it doesn't. And the blast radius is immediate because every client that depends on that endpoint fails at the same time. Also, auto-renew does not prevent this class of incident. Auto-renew is one link in a chain. The full chain is issuance, renewal, deployment, reload, and verification. A lot of real cert outages are renewal succeeded but deployment didn't reload, or new hostname wasn't included, or monitoring checked the wrong endpoint, or DNS validation broke and nobody noticed. So here's the practical operator version of this story. You need external monitoring for cert expiry from the outside against the actual endpoint users hit, not an internal health check, not a dashboard in the cert system. The real endpoint. You need ownership, a named owner, a team, a channel, someone that at 2 a.m. on call can tag and get traction. And you need runway, alerts well before expiry. If your alert fires 24 hours before expiry, you are still basically doing incident response. If it fires 30 days before expiry, you can fix weird edge cases like DNS changes, migrations, or validation issues calmly. Now, the Do This Monday pass. Pick your top 3 engineering org blockers. These are not always customer-facing. Often they're internal systems that block shipping. Artifact registry, Git host, CI endpoint, SSO login, webhook receiver, package download host, any of those. For each one, answer, do we have external monitoring for cert expiry and chain validity? Does it alert at least 14 days out, ideally 30? Is there an owner written down? Do we know where to fix it if renewal breaks? If the answer is no, that's a cheap reliability win you can fix without rewriting anything. And if you want a meta lesson, certs are one of those dependencies where the failure is so preventable that it's painful, which is why teams tend to overcut corners until they get burned. Don't wait for the burn. Story 3. Helm chart reliability. Prequel reviewed 105 popular open source Helm charts, and they found the average reliability score was roughly 3.98 out of 10, with a median around 4 out of 10. Their point isn't Helm is bad. It's that many charts ship demo-friendly defaults, not reliability-friendly defaults. This matters because charts aren't just packaging. They encode operational behavior, readiness and liveness, resource requests, update strategies, disruption behavior, security contexts, sometimes topology and scheduling assumptions. So when you install a chart, you are adopting a set of operational opinions whether you realize it or not. Here's how this bites teams. A chart has no resource requests. In dev, it looks fine. In prod, under pressure, it becomes unpredictable. Pods are throttled, get evicted, or get starved. Probes are missing or sloppy. Traffic gets routed to pods that aren't ready. Or probes are too aggressive and under load, they trigger restarts. No pod disruption budget, no topology spread, and then routing node maintenance becomes a cascading outage. Everything was highly available until you drained a node and lost a majority of replicas in one place. Unsafe update strategy and rollouts turn into brownouts. And the worst version is when Kubernetes says everything is green while your app is melting. That's where chart defaults turn into long incident timelines. So what do you do without forking every chart? You create a baseline overlay and a checklist. Baseline overlay is a thin layer in your GitOps repo, or Terraform or Helm release config where you enforce defaults. Resources required, probes required, explicit update strategy, PDB when appropriate, spread constraints if the service needs real availability, security context that matches your cluster policy. And the checklist is just, does this chart behave predictably under rollout, under node drain, under load spike? Now, the Do This Monday pass. Pick one chart you run in production that matters. The one that would page if it went sideways. Open its values and answer. Are resource requests set? Are probes set and meaningful? Do we have safe rollout behavior? Do we have disruption behavior planned? Will replicas spread across failure domains, or can they all land on one node? What happens if a node gets drained? If you can't answer quickly, that's your signal. Add the defaults, document them, and move on. You don't need perfect charts. You need boring, predictable behavior. Now, n8n, and this is new. Hacker News covered 2 high-severity vulnerabilities in n8n discovered by JFrog. The short version is, these flaws can let authenticated users escape the sandbox and execute code. One is in the expression sandbox, and the other involves Python code execution in internal mode. Here's the important part. People hear authenticated and they relax. Don't. In workflow automation platforms, the permission model is often broader than you think. Authenticated can include a lot of people who can build or edit workflows. And in tools like n8n, workflow editing is basically code execution, because workflows can evaluate expressions and interact with credentials. So this isn't, oh no, an attacker needs an account. The real question is, who in your org has an account? And what can their workflows touch? And what makes this class of bug extra painful is these tools often sit in the middle of your environment holding keys. Slack, GitHub, Jira, AWS keys, database credentials, webhooks, secret managers, all of it. So a sandbox escape is not just someone ran code. It's someone ran code where the keys live. That's why we keep coming back to n8n on this show. It's not because n8n is uniquely bad. It's because the category is high leverage. Okay, practical actions. First, patch. Don't debate it. If you self-host n8n, patch quickly when Sandbox escapes drop. The blast radius is too high to slow walk it. Second, reduce who can author workflows. Don't treat Workflow Editor as a casual permission. Treat it like can run code in a privileged environment, because effectively that's what it is. Third, reduce exposure. If your n8n UI is public on the internet, you are playing on hard mode. Put it behind SSO, VPN, IP allow lists, whatever fits your org. You want fewer people able to even reach the attack surface. Fourth, isolate it. If it's holding keys to a bunch of systems, at least give it a narrow runtime permission set. Least privilege on the credentials it uses. Separate credentials per workflow if you can. Don't run it with God mode access to AWS just because it was convenient once. And now the tie back to our last episodes where we talked about n8n CVEs. The theme has been consistent. Workflow automation tools are basically control planes. They need the same operational rigor you'd give to an internal platform. Patch fast, lock down authorship, reduce exposure, least privilege the credentials. If you treat it like just a tool, it will eventually treat you like just a breach. All right, time for the lightning round. First, use Tusk Fence. It's a lightweight sandbox for running commands that block network by default. If you are experimenting with agents, runbooks that execute, or any workflow where code runs on behalf of a user, this is the kind of primitive you want. Safe by default beats clever by default. Next, HashiCorp agent skills. This is part of a trend I actually like. Vendors shipping structured, reusable skills and guardrails instead of just telling you to prompt better and hope. Next, Marimo. It's a reactive Python notebook that stores as normal Python. That sounds small, but it matters because Git-friendly notebooks are actually useful for incident analysis, runbooks, or one-off ops experiments you want to keep without the notebook JSON misery. And a quick one from the register, the Ralph Wiggum Claude Loop story. It's funny, but the real point is dead serious. People are already building loops that keep agents running until they produce output. Without constraints and verification, that becomes confident nonsense at scale. The ops lesson is the same as alert fatigue. If your system floods you with low-quality output, humans stop trusting it. Okay, time for the human closer. Every story today is a glue failure. CI trigger logic becomes security boundary, and someone implemented it like it was just config. Cert renewals were treated like solved, and then the cliff happened. Charts were treated like installers, not operational dependencies. And workflow automation tools are treated like a convenience layer, even though they hold the keys. So the takeaway isn't stop using tools. It's treat guardrails like product work. Make untrusted pipelines truly untrusted. Make Cert monitoring external and owned. Make Helm baselines explicit. Make workflow authoring privileged. Make credentials least privilege. Because if you only build accelerators, you are not building a better platform. You are just building a faster incident. All right, time for a quick recap. We talked about CodeBreach and why CI triggers and filters are real security boundaries. We talked about Bazel and the Cert cliff problem. And we talked about Helm chart reliability and why defaults matter more than installs. And we talked about the new n8n Sandbox escape flaws and why workflow automation needs to be treated like a control plane. The lightning round was Fence, HashiCorp agent skills, Marimo, and the agent loop cautionary tale. Links and show notes are on shipitweekly.fm. If you got something out of this, follow the show wherever you are listening. And if you can, leave a quick rating or review. It helps a ton. I'm Brian, and I'll see you next week.